everybody. Happy Friday, right? Today's Friday. Yes, it is. How is everyone? I hope everyone's Friday is going well. And I did see that Team Brittany had stopped in earlier. True Texan, good to see you. Hey, Harsh Times. Hey, Bree, how are you? Chef Jose doesn't strike me as an alarmist. Aid workers, they're under Israelis' protection, shouldn't have been targeted accidentally or otherwise. That's supposed to be what makes us the good guys. Hey, Pookie. Tazzy, good to see you. Yeah, this is, I was debating whether or not to talk about this. And then I saw, today I was watching a news clip of Jose Andrés, which, if we're not aware of who he is the, I guess, owner operator of World Central Kitchen. That is a huge humanitarian effort all around the world. And when I heard him speak and then saw the images of those that lost their lives, I knew I was going to talk about it. So I know that this could be a contentious topic because everyone has, their own thoughts and opinions on what's going on in Gaza at the moment. But I thought it was important that we talk about, was it a mistake? And if it was, why did it happen? The other thing that really struck me is in one of the news clips, and I believe I do have it on this live. It was mentioned that when the first vehicle was hit, several workers were not severely injured. So they ran to another vehicle. And that's when that vehicle was hit. So to me, just based on what I've seen, if it was a mistake, it was a really, really bad one. And I don't think I have the article. I'm going to have to find it. But I do. There were, at the last time I checked, 2 Israeli military members were, not fired, but dismissed. So I wanted the correct word. I couldn't think of it. So I do have an article about that as well that we will talk about. Hey, K-Brace, how are you? Road Rash, good to see you. So we're going to get started. And the first thing I do want to mention again is World Central Kitchen, which is the organization that was recently targeted, if you want to call it that. And so I am going to drop their link in chat. It is also linked in the description of the video, but they do a lot of good work, like I said, all over the world. And I believe it was the earthquakes in, oh my gosh, now I can't remember, Venezuela, possibly. I did a live. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago where there were earthquakes, and World Central Kitchen was a huge part of getting those victims and those affected food, water, other things that they would need. So just to kind of show this site, they do have some updates here. I am going to read the New York Times opinion piece that Jose Andrés wrote I will be reading that at the very end of the live. But if you are interested, they do have some things regarding those who lost their lives, and also, just things about them. So here you can see past responses. I mean, just several. And that's in blue. And then the maroon or purple is where they are currently. However, they have pulled all of their humanitarian workers and aid from that region. And road rash, yes, I did feel it. It was about 3 seconds, maybe 5, but it wasn't like, I've seen videos of, homes in New Jersey where it was like really shaking. I thought something was going on with my furnace because it has gotten cold again. So I thought, what is that? And then I was like then I start freaking out, like, is something going on with the furnace? Like, is it gonna act up? Is it gonna die on me? Like, what's happening? But turns out it was an earthquake. It felt like when you're driving and you hit those rumble strips, like on the shoulder. That's what it felt like, but it was like 3 to 5 seconds. It was just enough for me to say, what is that? And it did freak my cat out as well. They went running. So pretty crazy. Oh, really, road rash? 10 miles from you. You thought the house was falling down. Yeah, I've never been, and I don't know what it would have felt like up here. I'm about 100 miles from where the epicenter was. But we did feel it. It just wasn't as, jolting, so to speak, as I've seen on video. Ooh, True Texan. That was actually a very good movie. I have seen Black Hawk Down. I haven't watched it in a while, but I have seen it, and I remember enjoying it. All right, so we are going to start with just a short clip of Jose Andrés' interview or statement. I will link this in the description after the live if you want to watch his entire interview. It was about 16 and a half minutes. So I will link that if you are interested after the live. Oh, wow. And Cheese Cracker, I'm just going to call you Cheese Cracker because, yeah, that's how I know you. Thought a truck hit a home or pole or something. Yeah. It was weird, that's for sure. All right. So we're going to listen to Mr. Andrés.
I was supposed to be there with my teams, but at the end, for different reasons, I was not able to go back again to Gaza.
And also, I did turn closed captioning on. You just might have to turn them on your screen because there was not closed captioning on this interview. And I am going to restart it because I just remembered that. But if you do need the closed captioning, just remember to hit the CC button.
I was supposed to be there with my teams, but at the end, for different reasons, I was not able to go back again to Gaza. But I follow closely the operations. In a way, the team I know was kind of happy because we were terminating a successful mission of receiving another hundreds of tons on the second time we came by boat. which was very important for us because we had to be increasing the amount of food coming, so we could be reaching from the middle of Gaza all the people in the north. And the team was coming from dropping in a warehouse we had south of Gaza in Dar es Salaam, all the food they were able to download before it got too dark. We were in an area that is kind of a secure area, what they call a deconflicting area, and was 2 armored cars plus one soft shell, and the teams were, as far as we know, already coming back from the warehouse in a way, and is when first I found out is that we couldn't get in touch with the teams, that somehow we kind of lost communication. You could argue that sometimes.
And so obviously losing communication would not necessarily be highly alarming, but concerning. I don't think anyone would think, oh my gosh, they were struck by a drone attack.
Cell signal doesn't work well all the time in Gaza, and you will say that was something like has happened before. You want to more or less have always the security that the people are leaving the place at the hour they are telling you, and they are getting to the next point at the hour they are telling you, as a way to keep the security. But then obviously we began seeing use this information that something went wrong, that something happened. And then is when I found out that our teams were target. And then obviously we found out that was beyond being target. That was members that died. We then had all the information, obviously, in the first minutes and hours, but very clear. The situation began being very obvious when we began seeing images of these bodies and these passports in the hospital that confirmed.
And I did see a video just after this happened with a photo of the passports that were found, and that image alone was striking to me. And he mentioned, seeing the bodies. There was one news clip, and I was surprised it was still on YouTube, that showed the aftermath of the strikes, and I didn't think it appropriate. However, that's what's happening. So that's the reality of the situation. But I am not going to be showing that video.
These were our people. At the end is what we know, what everybody knows. That 7 team members between the specialty security people we have, 3 British individuals and 3 international crew plus 1 Palestinian, that they were target systematically, car by car. They attacked the first car. We're still trying to get all the information on what happened on the first car. We have a feeling they were able to escape safely because it was an armored vehicle. This was only the third day we had armored vehicles. We've been 6 months trying to bring them in. But the first armored vehicle was hit. They were able to escape. We still don't know all the details on the events in terms of people injured or people even dead. They were able to move in the second one. Again, this one was hit. They were able to move in the third one. In the process, we know they were trying to call. But in the chaos of the moment, whatever happened, they to try to be telling IDF that what are they doing, that they were targeting us in the conflicting zone, in an area controlled by IDF, them knowing that was our teams moving on that route with 2 armed.
And I believe I do have the one news clip. The road that the World Central Kitchen was driving on was a road specific for humanitarian aid workers. So it was a road that was, at least the military stated, that it was a, quote, safe road. And clearly that wasn't the case. Hey, Healing Time, how are you? I know, super sad.
With 3 cars, and then they hit the third one, and then we saw the consequences of that continuous targeting attack. Seven people dead, but there are 7 on top of a list of more than another 190 humanitarian workers that they've been killed over the last 6 months.
And so again, that was a question that I believe Sinner and I were talking about a few days ago about how many humanitarian workers had lost their lives. And so there it was, upwards of 190 humanitarian aid workers have lost their lives in 6 months. And I don't think I've heard of those other 190 plus workers. That's really, it's staggering. Okay, so this next clip we get into more about what may have happened. I believe this one also has a statement from the Israeli military.
Now we're going to the Middle East and the startling new details about the deaths of 7 aid workers in Gaza. They were killed, as you know, by Israeli airstrikes on 3 separate vehicles.
And so this image is, to me, very powerful. You can see where it just dropped right into their car. And one thing I didn't know before looking into this story was that they had painted the organization's name on top of every vehicle so that for that purpose, if someone was looking down, they would be able to see, I would hope, that they were humanitarian aid workers and not I'm losing the word, enemies, so to speak.
The Israeli military has called it a mistake, but Chef José Andrés, who runs this nonprofit that employed these workers, says there's evidence that they were deliberately targeted. Holly Williams has been following this story from Israel. Holly, good morning. This is tough to hear.
And I'm wondering, so to say they were deliberately targeted, I mean, I guess, like, I don't know. I think that would be possibly hard to prove. However, knowing that the two, and actually, let's go to that article because this is probably a good segue. So this was from Al Jazeera, and it was written, updated 3 hours ago. So it says, Israeli military sacks 2 officers over strikes on World Central Kitchen aid convoy. Israeli military says its officers believed they were targeting Hamas fighters when they killed charity workers. Okay, I'm trying to get rid of this ad here, but I guess I'm not going to be able to. The Israeli military says it has dismissed 2 officers and reprimanded 3 others for their roles in an attack in central Gaza that killed 7 aid workers, saying they had mishandled critical information and violated the army's rules of engagement. The military said on Friday that an internal investigation found its forces had mistakenly believed they were, quote, targeting armed Hamas operatives, end quote. The victims, an Australian, 3 Britons, a North American, a Palestinian, and a Pole, were killed on Monday night in 3 airstrikes over 4 minutes by an Israeli drone as they ran for their lives between their 3 vehicles. It's a serious event that we are responsible for, and it shouldn't have happened, and we will make sure that it won't happen again, military spokesman Danielle Hagari told reporters. The United States-based charity World Central Kitchen, whose convoy was hit, said Israel's, quote, apologies for the outrageous killing of our colleagues represent cold comfort, end quote, and it called for an independent investigation into the attack. World Central Kitchen CEO Aaron Gore also said, quote, Israel needs to take concrete steps to assure the safety of humanitarian aid workers. Our operations remain suspended, end quote. The Israeli military said that after the vehicles left a warehouse where WCK aid had been unloaded, quote, one of the commanders mistakenly assumed that the gunmen were located inside the accompanying vehicles and that these were Hamas terrorists, end quote. Its report called the strike on the aid vehicles a grave mistake stemming from a serious failure due to a mistaken identification, errors in decision-making, and an attack contrary to the standard operating procedures. Those dismissed were a fire support commander holding the rank of major and a brigade chief of staff holding the rank of colonel in reserve. It also formally reprimanded the commander of the brigade involved and the division commander. Chief of the General Staff, Herzi Halavi, reprimanded the commander of the Southern Command, quote, for his overall responsibility for the incident, end quote. Reporting from occupied East Jerusalem, Al Jazeera's Rory Challens pointed out that Israel's report makes no mention of any potential prosecutions against the dismissed officers. That might come in the future, but it's certainly not contained in the report. What we're getting is dismissals and military reprimands, but that's not necessarily justice for the family and friends of the people who died. Israel's National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, accused the military leadership of abandoning its soldiers. The Chief of Staff's decision to dismiss senior officers is an abandonment of the fighters in the middle of a war and a serious mistake that conveys weakness. Even if there are mistakes in identification, soldiers are backed up in war. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Friday that, quote, it's very important that Israel is taking full responsibility for this incident and taking steps to hold those responsible accountable. However, White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby said there were no plans by the U.S. to conduct an independent investigation into the killings. David Cameron, the UK's foreign minister, welcomed the suspension of the two officers and said his country was carefully reviewing the findings of Israel's investigation. These findings must be published in full and followed up with a wholly independent review to ensure the utmost transparency and accountability. All right, we're going to end that there. I will link this article as well. If anyone wants to read the rest of that, I will link it in the description.
Good morning, Gail. Chef José Andrés, as you know, is a hugely respected figure who's dedicated himself to feeding the hungry. Now he's making accusations about how his team members were killed.
So this was not just a bad luck situation where, we dropped the bomb in the wrong place.
The 7 World Central Kitchen aid workers killed by Israel's military in Gaza were targeted systematically, car by car, according to the group's founder, the Spanish-American chef José Andrés.
And this looks like it's not a war against terrorism anymore. Seems this is a war against humanity itself.
Speaking on Israeli television, he broke down.
I've been in Gaza myself. I met, and some of the people that died were my friends, and I served with them.
Israel's military says the attack on the 3-car convoy was a mistake after a misidentification. But World Central Kitchen says it was coordinating its movements in Gaza with the military. Andrés claims his team tried to call the Israeli military even as they came under fire. Some moving from the first car after it was hit to the second, which was also hit.
And that's what really got me, is that the first car was hit, and those from that first car that was hit ran to the second car, and then they were hit in that car. So they were under attack. And clearly it was planned. And I guess in some respect you could say it was deliberate.
And then the third, leaving all 7 dead. CBS News has geolocated the wreckage of the cars to positions hundreds of yards apart.
Oh, and I must have missed that when I was watching these. So I actually like this visual better than I did a short, and the visual I had in that, I thought this one's actually a lot better. So you can see it wasn't very far apart at all. So the first vehicle hit was here, second vehicle, and then several yards from there, the third vehicle is hit.
It rings true that this was likely a misidentification.
Wes Bryant is a retired Master Sergeant who served in the US Air Force and blames the incident on, quote, negligent callousness, saying it's not a standalone incident for Israel's military.
At least one vehicle was clearly marked, and the other 2 were very clearly a part of that convoy. So not to know those critical pieces of information is pure negligence. And that right there would have been one of the checks to say, hey, wait, this is a yellow flag or a red flag here.
The bodies of the 6 foreign aid workers were transported out of Gaza yesterday, including Jacob Flickinger, a 33-year-old dual US-Canadian citizen who leaves behind a baby son.
This incident is already impacting on Palestinians who are contending with war and hunger, because it's not just World Central Kitchen that suspended its operations in Gaza. Now another American nonprofit, Anera, says it's also pausing its work there. Gail.
It's devastating all the way around. Holly Williams reporting from Israel. We thank you.
All right. So again, not only World Central Kitchen, but another humanitarian aid agency also has suspended its aid. So now we're going to get into a little bit more about what happened, but also into the victims, so those who lost their lives. I do have an interview with the Canadian American victims' parents as well as his partner.
The World Central Kitchen, a disaster relief charity run by the famed chef José Andrés, has now paused humanitarian operations in Gaza. That's after an Israeli airstrike killed 7 of its workers, including an American. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu acknowledged that Israeli forces did indeed carry out what he called an unintended strike. The White House is calling the incident heartbreaking and troubling and urging Israel to investigate what happened. News 4's Gus Rosendale live in the newsroom with the reaction to this coming in from across the world. Gus.
And Adam, tonight, as the group pauses its operations, ships with additional aid are turning back from the region. And Israel, yes, now accepting responsibility for the deaths as international criticism is growing. The Israeli.
Yeah, True Texan, SoFlo is here now, and I know Pookie was here. I'm also looking at chat as when I'm playing the thank you, SoFlo. Yeah. So SoFlo's here now though, so I have someone else helping me out.
airstrike killed a total of 7 aid workers, including a dual citizen of the U.S. and Canada, plus team members from Britain, Australia, and Poland, along with a Palestinian driver. They were all working with World Central Kitchen, the food charity's logo still visible in the bombed-out wreckage. The group says it coordinated the team's movements with the Israeli military, but that did not protect its members from the deadly bombing. Celebrity chef and World Central Kitchen founder José Andrés called the victims angels and wrote on social media, "The Israeli government needs to stop this indiscriminate killing and stop using food."
All right, so I'm just going to read this. So this looks like it was from Twitter. So José Andrés says, today at World Central Kitchen, lost several of our sisters and brothers in an IDF airstrike in Gaza. I am heartbroken and grieving for their families and friends and our whole WCK family. These are people, angels. I served alongside in Ukraine, Gaza, Turkey, Morocco, Bahamas, Indonesia. They are not faceless. They are not nameless. The Israeli government needs to stop this indiscriminate killing. It needs to stop restricting humanitarian aid, stop killing civilians and aid workers, and stop using food as a weapon. No more innocent lives lost. Peace starts with our shared, I'm not sure what that says, shared efforts, possibly. It needs to start now.
Food as a weapon. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today confirmed his country's military was responsible for the deaths, saying,
Give me 1 second, everybody.
Unfortunately, in the last day, there was a tragic case of our forces unintentionally hitting innocent people in the Gaza Strip. It happens in war, adding, we will do everything so that this thing does not happen again.
These people are heroes. They run into the fire, not away from it. They show the best of what humanity has to offer.
Hey, this is Zomi in Sheffield.
One victim, Australian Zomi Frankham, was considered an experienced aid worker, and her country's prime minister says he expects full accountability.
This is just completely unacceptable. Aid workers and those doing humanitarian work, and indeed all innocent civilians, need to be provided with protection.
World Central Kitchen says it's served more than 40 million meals.
Oh, wow. So that's pretty cool how they come in with the boats and then they have their logo just, so everyone can see.
In the region since the conflict began.
I just spoke to WCK founder, Chef José Andrés, and expressed the deepest condolences of Israel Defense Forces to the families and the entire World Central Kitchen family.
I'm gonna miss my my phone calls or text exchanges with her, or photos of her from wherever she's ended up in the world at that moment. It's a huge loss personally for me, but it's a greater one, I think, for humanity.
And along with an investigation, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also called for additional protection of aid workers along with other innocent civilian lives. In the newsroom, I'm Gus Rosendale, News 4 New York.
Yes. All right, so this next one again gets into who the victims were, because again, they weren't nameless, they weren't faceless. They were there again. They chose to help in volatile locations, but they were doing really good work. Hey, KCG, how are you?
We're learning new details today about the 7 aid workers from World Central Kitchen who were killed by Israel's military in Gaza. All 7 victims have now been identified, including an American. The airstrikes destroyed the victims' cars on Monday in what Israel claims was a case of mistaken identity. Holly Williams has the story.
World Central Kitchen has named Jacob Flickinger, a 33-year-old dual US-Canadian citizen, as one of 7 of its team members killed by the Israeli.
So again, we have Saifuddin Issam Ayad Abutayah, 25 years old, from Palestine. Laz Lalzwami or Zami Francom, 43 years old, from Australia. Damien Sobal, 35 years old, from Poland. Jacob Flickinger, 33, dual citizen in USA and Canada. John Chapman, 57, from UK. James Jim Henderson, 33, from the UK. And James Kirby, age 47, from the UK.
Israeli military in Gaza. It appears their convoy of 3 cars was targeted with strikes multiple times, even though the non-profit says it was coordinating its movement with Israel's military, which called it a grave mistake.
It was a mistake that followed a misidentification at night during a war in a very complex conditions.
These people are heroes.
The US government says it's outraged by the deaths, calling on Israel to carry out a swift and impartial investigation.
We've impressed upon the Israelis the absolute imperative of doing more to protect innocent civilian lives, be they Palestinian children, women, and men, or be they aid workers.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the incident tragic and unintentional, also saying, quote, "This happens in war." Relations between the US and Israel appear increasingly strained, even though America is Israel's most important ally. Nowhere is the tension more evident than over Israel's planned offensive in Rafah in southern Gaza, where around 1.5 million Palestinians are sheltering, many in tents. Israel says it needs to destroy Hamas's remaining battalions. The US is warning against an assault without a credible plan to protect civilians.
After sending hundreds of tons of food aid to Gaza, World Central Kitchen has now paused its operations there. Its founder, the Spanish-American chef José Andrés, wrote in a New York Times opinion piece, quote, "Israel is better than the way this war is being waged." Tony.
Holly Williams for us in Israel. Holly, thank you very much.
Yeah, I know, SoFlo. Like, oh my gosh. I mean, come on, rapper. All right. Oops.
Welcome to the News Hour. Today, the bodies of foreign aid workers killed in an Israeli strike early yesterday morning have left Gaza and are being flown to their home countries.
They worked for World Central Kitchen, whose founder today accused Israel of targeting his employees deliberately. That's an accusation that Israel denies. Nick Schifrin starts our coverage.
He had flown 7,800 miles from home to help feed the hungry. Today, he began his final journey home, pushed out of a morgue. American-Canadian Jacob Flickinger was 33 years old. He leaves behind his partner Sandy and their 1-year-old boy. With him as he crossed the Egyptian border today, his friends in life and death. Australian Lalzwami Francom, known as Zomi, Damien Sobel from Poland, and their British security team, John Chapman, James Henderson, and James Kirby, whose cousin today remembered him as someone who wanted to help.
He was completely self.
And just seeing those ambulances all leaving at the same time is heartbreaking. Hey, Scorpio, what's going on? Scorpio, you might have gotten lost in the many messages of Rapper.
Selfless, which explains why he went to Gaza.
World Central Kitchen, or WCK, says it coordinated with the Israeli military late Monday night as a convoy left its warehouse in Deir al-Balah by the sea in central Gaza. The group says Israeli munitions hit an initial vehicle. Workers then moved to another vehicle that was struck, and then a third vehicle that was struck as they traveled on or next.
And I'm curious as to, because it looks like there's quite a few roads in this area. So I'm curious what the amount of traffic is at the time that they were moving along this road, and why they believed that these 3 cars were Hamas militants. It's just weird.
To the coastal road that Israel designates for humanitarian aid.
We were targeted deliberately, non-stop, until everybody was dead in this convoy.
José Andrés is the founder of World Central Kitchen.
And I somewhat have to agree with him on that when he said they were attacked until everyone in that convoy was dead.
He's a celebrity chef whose activism and charity has earned him deep respect among policymakers. The group also fed Israelis after Hamas's October 7th terrorist attack. He spoke to Reuters today.
It looks like it's not a war against terrorism anymore. Seems this is a war against humanity itself.
Yeah. And I agree with that. It's not just an attack on humans, it's an attack on humanity itself. Completely agree with that statement. So now we get into the interview with Jason's parents.
One of those killed was a dual American and Canadian
I'm
citizen.
sorry, Jacob.
Jacob
misspoke.
Flickinger. His dad is American, his mom...
Jacob Flickinger. I apologize. I said Jason. I meant Jacob.
Mom is Canadian. The 33-year-old father had been volunteering in Gaza since March. His parents, Sylvie Lebrec and John Flickinger, join us now from Quebec. Thank you very much, parents. I don't even have the words to begin to say how sorry we are that this has happened to you. No pain will ease those words, but instead of focusing on the circumstances of your son's death at this time, I want to focus on his life for just a second. We just learned about him 48 hours ago. You all, of course, have known him his whole life. What can you tell us about him? Mom, Sylvie, you please go first.
Well, I would just say that Jacob was a very good, exceptional human being. He was very much into his work, his passion. He's done 11 years in military here in Canada with the Canadian Forces. And he was so much into it. And even after leaving the army, he kept on doing special mission here and there, which meant a lot to him. And, you know, we'll never be able to stop his passion. That's where his heart was. And he gave it all the way till the end.
He did give it all. John, you know, friends who worked with him said that Jacob was not scared or apprehensive. He just wanted to help. What did he tell you all about where he was going and what he was going to be doing?
Hi, good morning, Gail.
Good morning.
First, let me say that our hearts go out to the families of the other aid workers for the World Central Kitchen that were killed in the attack, and all the aid workers in Gaza. There have been close to 200.
Right. And so again, we heard from José Andrés that it was upwards of 190 in 6 months.
People trying to help the women and children and innocent victims of this conflict. So our hearts go out to all the families who've lost loved ones.
Ours too.
Jacob said he served with the World Central Kitchen in Mexico after the devastating hurricane there in the fall. He loves the organization. He wanted to do more work with them. It combined his, passion for service, which he's shown throughout his life, and his skills that he's developed in serving in the military. He was hesitant to go. He's a a new father. He has a beautiful 18-month-old son, a beautiful young wife he was very devoted to. But he felt the need, and he, of course, needs to support his family. They
Yes,
moved recently to Costa Rica.
What have
Sorry,
you
go
all
ahead.
been told? What have you all been told about the circumstances of his death? Because it seems the more we hear, the worse it sounds. What have you all been told?
We haven't been told anything by the United States government or the Canadian government. All we know is what we've read and seen on the media. We know that he was that the convoy that was attacked by the IDF was in a deconflicted zone. We know that they were cleared. Israel has very strict restrictions on any movement through that zone. They control that area. We know that they were aware, the entire world was aware, that this food shipment was coming in. It's been international news for days. They were aware that the food was picked up at the ship on the coast of Gaza. It was delivered to a warehouse along an approved humanitarian route approved by Israel. Soon after they dropped
Right. And so that's what I had also heard in another clip, was that this route was deemed for humanitarian aid workers. So it was known, at least it should have been known by all, that this was a designated route.
food off. We know that they were targeted. Convoy was clearly marked. The vehicles were clearly marked. It wasn't, the facts on the ground seem to indicate that it wasn't a, quote, tragic accident.
Yeah, Israeli officials, though, would say it wasn't targeted, that it was a terrible mistake. I think everybody's still trying to...
Oh, and I didn't mean to cut her off where I did. And for those of you, hopefully we've gotten all of Rapper's accounts. I doubt it. But if I don't respond to your comment, please comment again, because I did miss a few messages as we were going through this. So this clip is from Jacob's wife, and I have it in two parts because there was a section of this clip where there were scenes of extreme violence. So I obviously did not want to put that on my live. So her interview is in two different parts. Hey, Ava, how are you? Yes, it was IDF controlled area, yes.
Nearly 33,000 people have been killed in Gaza since October 7th. That's according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Many of those women and children, and more than 200 of those killed have been humanitarian aid workers. As we've reported, 7 more aid workers, this time from World Central Kitchen, were killed in Israeli missile strikes on Monday. Among those killed, Jacob Flickinger, a 33-year-old Canadian and American citizen who volunteered to distribute food in Gaza some 3 weeks ago. His death marks the first American killed by an Israeli airstrike in Gaza. Our next guest is his partner and the mother of their son, Sandy Leclerc. Sandy, right off the bat, words obviously will never be enough, but on behalf of all of us here at ABC News, we offer our profound condolences for your loss. What do you want? Of course. What do you want people to know about Jacob, other than what they're seeing in the headlines?
I want people to know that he was such a man. He was a man of service, and he wanted to help. He wanted to be brave in this situation and help these people that were in need. And he's always been doing that through his life, since he's a veteran from the Canadian Army Force, and he has a lot of experience going out in other countries and helping people out. And yeah, I hope people remember him as such a brave man that was willing to go help people.
It seems like helping people was just a part of his fabric, a part of who he was.
Oh yeah, it was deeply inside of him as a need to exist, of his existence.
How did you find out about what happened in Gaza?
So on the 1st of April, I felt stressed all day, and I didn't know why. And I told him the last day before the day that he was killed, I told him, please always say goodnight to me. And then I forgot that he didn't tell me goodnight this day. And then just a few moments later, I got a call from one of his coworkers saying to me that he was gone. And I am devastated by this news because he was a part of me, and he's such a loving father to his son, and I don't know how I will explain that to him, that he is now gone. So this is a lot to process.
I can't even imagine what that is to process. I'm wondering, have you gotten a call? Has either the U.S. or Canadian governments reached out to you at this point?
Yes, we have been having a lot of help with the Canadian government, and we are still waiting on the U.S. government to send out their help. We are waiting for that.
Okay, so we're going to move to the second part. Again, I did clip out a section that showed extreme violence.
He had already done his time in the military, and he had been to other countries for Canada, right? He was part of the Canadian military.
Yes.
And then he still chose to go and do this. You told us that is just a part of who he was. And you were talking about not knowing how you were going to explain this to your son. But obviously you'll tell your son that his dad was a hero and he was trying to help feed people, right?
Of course. This situation saddens me so much, but at the same time, Jacob was always a warrior, always a fighter, and he would always fight to bring more peace into this world. So that's what I will explain to him, and we will keep remembering every day of our life. He will always be part of our family in the spirit, and we will always remember how brave he was. That's what I'm going to tell my kid.
The leader of the World Central Kitchen, José Andrés, says the aid workers were actually targeted. He's been on point about saying that over the last couple of days. President Biden says he was outraged, or reportedly outraged by the killing. Is outrage enough? What would you tell President Biden today?
I would tell him that we need some answers. We need the truth of what happened, because the situation is so unclear. So please, Mr. Biden, give us the truth of what happened.
All right. And so we are going to, last thing we're going to do is read a guest essay, an opinion piece that José Andrés wrote for the New York Times. And this is titled José Andrés, Let People Eat. And this is from April 3rd. In the worst conditions you can imagine, after hurricanes, earthquakes, bombs, and gunfire, the best of humanity shows up, not once or twice, but always. The 7 people killed in a World Central Kitchen mission in Gaza on Monday were the best of humanity. They are not faceless or nameless. They are not generic aid workers or collateral damage in war. Saifuddin Assam Ayad Abutia, John Chapman, Jacob Flickinger, Zomi Frankum, James Henderson, James Kirby, and Damian Sobel risked everything for the most fundamentally human activity, to share our food with others. These are people I served alongside in Ukraine, Turkey, Morocco, the Bahamas, Indonesia, Mexico, Gaza, and Israel. They were far more than heroes. Their work was based on the simple belief that food is a universal human right. It is not conditional on being good or bad, rich or poor, left or right. We do not ask what religion you belong to. We just ask how many meals you need. From day one, we have fed Israelis as well as Palestinians. Across Israel, we have served more than 1.75 million hot meals. We have fed families displaced by Hezbollah rockets in the north. We have fed grieving families from the south. We delivered meals to the hospitals where hostages were reunited with their families. We have called consistently, repeatedly, and passionately for the release of all of the hostages. All the while, we have communicated extensively with Israeli military and civilian officials. At the same time, we have worked closely with community leaders in Gaza, as well as Arab nations in the region. There is no way to bring a ship full of food to Gaza without doing so. That's how we served more than 43 million meals in Gaza, preparing hot food in 68 community kitchens where Palestinians are feeding Palestinians. We know Israelis. Israelis, in their heart of hearts, know that food is not a weapon of war. Israel is better than the way this war is being waged. It is better than blocking food and medicine to civilians. It is better than killing aid workers who had coordinated their movements with the Israeli Defense Forces. The Israeli government needs to open more land routes for food and medicine today. It needs to stop killing civilians and aid workers today. It needs to start the long journey to peace today. In the worst conditions, after the worst terrorist attack in its history, it's time for the best of Israel to show up. You cannot save the hostages by bombing every building in Gaza. You cannot win this war by starving an entire population. We welcome the government's promise of an investigation into how and why members of our World Central Kitchen family were killed. That investigation needs to start at the top, not just the bottom. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said of the Israeli killings of our team, quote, "It happens in war," end quote. It was a direct attack on clearly marked vehicles whose movements were known by the Israeli Defense Forces. It was also the direct result of a policy that squeezed humanitarian aid to desperate levels. Our team was en route from a delivery of almost 400 tons of aid by sea. Our second shipment, funded by the United Arab Emirates, supported by Cyprus, and with clearance from the Israeli Defense Forces. The team members put their lives at risk precisely because this food aid is so rare and desperately needed. According to the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Global Initiative, half the population of Gaza, 1.1 million people, faces the imminent risk of famine. The team would not have made the journey if there were enough food traveling by truck across land to feed the people of Gaza. The peoples of the Mediterranean and Middle East, regardless of ethnicity and religion, share a culture that values food as a powerful statement of humanity and hospitality, of our shared hope for a better tomorrow. There's a reason, at this special time of year, Christians make Easter eggs. Muslims eat an egg at iftar dinners, and an egg sits on the siddur plate. This symbol of life and hope reborn in spring extends across religions and cultures. I have been a stranger at siddur dinners. I have heard the ancient Passover stories about being a stranger in the land of Egypt, the commandment to remember, with a feast before you, that the children of Israel were once slaves. It is not a sign of weakness to feed strangers. It is a sign of strength. The people of Israel need to remember, at this darkest hour, what strength truly looks like. And again, José Andrés is a chef and the founder of World Central Kitchen. Yeah, it was that to me was very powerful and really resonated with me. Unfortunately, they are at war, and people become selfish when they want to win said war. So I'm just glad that there are people who will risk their lives to help the innocent population that's just trying to survive. Yeah, K-Braze, I agree. It seems to be a big part of war is people going hungry and thirsty on purpose, and it's people like Jose that try and change that. I agree. Definitely agree. Yeah, definitely prayers. So, it's a lot. I know we all have our own opinions and thoughts on the situation. But again, I was shocked when I learned that nearly now 200 humanitarian aid workers have lost their lives in 6 months. And I give them all the credit in the world because I know personally I probably would not volunteer to go to a war zone or a place of conflict and extreme violence. So, well, yeah, True Texan, the whole point of war is to win, but what if no one will ever win? It's just constant. And I just feel for, the innocent people who just happened to be born there, who just happened to live there, that didn't necessarily ask for any of this. So, yeah. So, what I'm going to leave you with is a short that came from, I believe this was ABC News. ABC News has actually been doing a really good coverage on this. CBS as well. And this was a short about the victims. And so I'm going to end with this. So thank you everyone for being here. I do appreciate it. I'm not sure if I will be live tomorrow on this channel, but I am hoping to have a live on Sunday around 4:30-ish. So definitely make sure your notifications are on. If you aren't subscribed, please do so. And hit the like on your way out. I do appreciate it. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And if I don't see you on these YouTube streets, I'll see you all on the flip side.
This is the beautiful, fragrant, aromatic rice that will be served today from Jinabala Kitchen. Thank you.